Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How are you, students? Hope all of you are safe and sound. Welcome to the virtual science class. Today we have 24th lecture and we will continue our chapter number 17, forces. I think you remember that in the previous lecture we learned about the force, the unit of the force, friction, advantages and disadvantages of the friction. What is force? In physics, the force is any interaction that, when unopposed, will change the motion of an object. Or a force moves or tends to move, and also it stops or tends to stop the motion of any body. The force can also change the direction and the motion of the body, and sometimes when we apply the force on some bodies, it also change the shape of the body. Like if you can cut an apple like with a knife by pushing its sharp edge into the apple, what happens? That's a force. We apply the force over there and we see that the knife change the shape and the size of the apple. It means that force also change the shape and size of the body on which it acts. Forces can be measured using a force meter, also called a Newton meter. The unit of the force is Newton. Force meters contain a spring connected a metal hook you can see in the diagram. The stretches when a force is applied to the hook. The bigger the force, the longer the spring stretches and the bigger the reading. Definitely when we apply the more force, what happened? The spring stretch longer and also the reading will be increases. Then we learn about the friction. Friction is also a type of force. Friction is a force between two surfaces that are sliding or trying to slide across each other. Friction always works in the direction opposed to the direction in which the object is moving or trying to move. So simply we can say that friction is the force that opposes the motion of moving objects is called its friction. Suppose when we run, we ride, we can walk. If there is no friction, it will not be possible for us. You see that due to the friction, the wheel moving on the floor or on the road, and same, a man can push a heavy block. And also due to friction, the fire in the trees, and also you see the red portion of the tooth of the machine. Yes, students, now we will read about the ways to reduce friction, lubrication, streamlining, gravity, mass, and weight. The first is the ways of reduce friction, how we can reduce the friction. Make the surfaces smoother. Rough surfaces produce more friction and smooth surfaces reduce friction. Like you can slip on the smooth floor, and sometimes it will be difficult for us to climb on the mountain or the walk, or we can walk on the rough road. It will be difficult for us. Lubrication is another way to make a surface smoother. make the object more streamlined, reduce the forces acting on the surface, reduce the contact between the surfaces. The friction can be reduced by making the sliding surfaces smooth, making the fast moving objects a streamlining shape like fish shape. You see the face of the fish like a streamline, such as cars, aeroplanes, etc. This causes a smooth flow of air and thus minimize the air resistance at high speeds. Lubricating the sliding surfaces using ball bearing or roller bearing because the rolling friction is lesser than the sliding friction. Way to reduce friction. Page number 107. Smooth surfaces have less friction, so by smoothing or polishing surfaces, friction is decreased. Do you know why boric powder is used on a carom board? All of you, I think, have the carom board and you also play on it. It is reduce friction so that the striker moves fast, sliding smoothly on the board. Have you played carom? A fine talcum powder is sprinkled on the carom board. Do you know why? When you sprinkle the powder on the carom board, your striker and coins move very smoothly. So that's why we use the talcum powder. We use the talcum powder over it to reduce the friction. Same here, there are some examples of reducing friction, applying lubrication. As you lubricate or give the oil to your cycles, applying oil, polishing the surfaces, adding the wheels. It will be easy for us to move the bags which have the wheels, and also we use the ball bearing. This is mostly used in the machine, ball bearing, and in the vehicle. Ways to reduce friction. Switching from sliding kinetic friction to rolling kinetic friction. Example, placing a large heavy box on a cart with wheels to move it instead of pushing it. You see that it will be difficult for us to push a heavy block. If we put in a cart with wheel, it will be easy for us to move from one place to another. The second topic is lubrication. A lubrication is a substance, usually organic, introduced to reduce friction between surfaces in mutual contact, which ultimately reduces the heat generated when the surface moves. It may also have the function of transmitting forces, transporting foreign particles, or heating or cooling the surfaces. Page 107 of your book. Lubricants like oil or grease can reduce friction. They not only reduce friction, they can also prevent parts of machine from wearing away. Yes, you see the examples of lubrication. We give the oil or oiling, or we give the grease to the vehicles or the parts of the machine. Then it will be moved easily. Streamlining. Design or provide with a form that present very little resistance to a flow of air or water, increasing speed and ease of movement. It means that the streamlined shape helps to reduce the friction of the air. Page 108 of your book. Making the surface smooth and rounded helps in reducing friction. The shapes of vehicle which moves through air or water are designed in such a way that they reduce friction between the vehicle and the air they are moving through. You see the example of the car. Streamlining reduces friction. Air flows smoothly over the car. There are some examples of streamlining. You see the train. Streamlining the bullet train reduces air resistance at high speed. Same there are the shape of an aeroplane, fish, a man who is diving in the water, the cyclist, the cap. You see the cap of the hat of the helmet of the cyclist is the shape of the streamline. And you know also the shape of the cars. The vehicles are designed with the streamline. Smooth airflow, the high speed reduces the air resistance. Our next topic is about gravity. Students, before discussing this, I want to tell you about the gravity. One day in 1665, a scientist called Sir Isaac Newton, all of you know about this scientist. Newton was sitting under an apple tree when an apple fell onto the ground. Why did it fall? Then Newton thought that how apple come to the ground or fell on the ground. He thought to himself, no one had pushed or pulled it. He realized that there must be a force that pulled it towards the earth. He called this force which pulls things towards the center of the earth gravity. It means the force which pulls the thing towards the earth is called the gravity. Gravity or gravitation is a natural phenomena by which all things with mass or energy, including planets, stars, galaxies, and even light, are brought towards one another. On Earth, gravity gives weight to physical objects, and the moon's gravity causes the ocean tides. Gravity. Another type of force is known as gravity. Gravity is the force which pulls things towards each other or the center of the earth. Gravity always attracts objects towards one another. It never repels them. Like magnetism, gravity cannot be seen, but it can be felt. It is a force which keeps the planets orbiting around the sun and stops you from floating into space. It means that if there is no gravity, what will be happen to us? We always float in the air or in the space. Only due to gravity we can walk and we can walk on the earth. Any two objects exert an attractive force on each other. The amount of attraction depends on two things: the mass of the object and the distance between the object. Definitely, there are two things: mass and the distance. Gravity itself is a very weak force. That's why we cannot feel that force. The paper of your book is attracting you and you are attracting the paper, but this pull is not noticeable because you and the paper have very little mass. You need a very large mass in order to get a noticeable gravitational pull. On Earth, the effects of this force are quite visible. No matter how high you jump, gravity pulls you down. If you drop a plate, gravity will pull it down toward the center of the earth. Do you understand this? The gravity depends on two things: the mass of the object and the distance between the objects. Gravitational force is very weak force that we cannot feel it. This is an example of gravity of Earth, that the moons of the Earth moving in the particular orbits. This is due to the gravitational force. And also you see the Earth and the moon. And you know that the moon's gravity act on the oceans. And as I told you before, if there is no gravity, what happens? We always float in the space. And also all the things will float in the space if there is no gravity. Gravity will also act on the center of the earth. The next topic is about mass and weight. The mass is essential. How much stuff is in the object? Weight. There is a gravitational interaction between objects that have mass. If you consider an object interacting with the earth, this force is called the weight. The unit for weight is the Newton, same as for any other force. Generally, mass and weight are considered similar quantity, but it is not correct because they are two different quantities. Mass of a body is the quantity of matter possessed by a body. It is a scalar quantity and does not change with change to day. On the other hand, weight of the body is the force of gravity acting on it. Weight of the body is the force of gravity acting on it. It means that mass is the quantity of matter and weight is a force of gravity. So there is a difference of mass and weight. Weight is a force. It is in fact the amount of gravitational force acting on an object. On Earth, it is caused by the force of attraction between the Earth and all the objects on its surface. The greater the distance an object has from the Earth, the less the force of attraction, so the weight will also be less. Remember that the weight of an object depends on where it is. Since weight is a force, it is measured in newtons. That I told you before. Mass is the quantity of the matter and the weight is the force of gravity. Mass is measure of how much matter an object contains. It is measured in kilogram. The mass of an object stays the same no matter where it is. Study the following example. A 60 kilogram mass weighs 600 Newton on the Earth. However, on the Moon, which is smaller than the Earth, the mass remains 60 kg, but it will weigh only 100 Newton. So, if you were to travel to the Moon, your weight would change because the pull of gravity is weaker there than on Earth. It means that mass will not be changed if we change the place, but the weight will be changed if we change the altitude or if we change the distance from the Earth. Your body's mass would not change because you would still have the same amount of matter in you. But weight will be changed because the gravitational force is weaker on the Moon. So that's why mass will be same, the weight will be changed. On the Moon, the astronaut's body mass will remain the same, but its weight will change. Yes, this is an example of weight. You see the gravitational force act on it, so that's why it moves downwards. This is also the example of mass and weight. In the left there is weight and the right it is mass. As I told you before this about Sir Isaac Newton, who knows that why things pulls toward the earth due to the gravitational force. Before doing the exercise, let us give a quick review to our chapter, over today's lecture. Lubrication. A lubricant is a substance, usually organic, introduced to reduce friction between surfaces. Why we lubricate the things? Because we want to reduce the friction. These all are the examples of reducing friction. We also design or provide with a form that present very little resistance to flow of air or water, increasing speed and ease of movement. The streamlined shapes of birds and fish show how nature has designed them. to move fast in air and through water. Due to that shapes, we also design the vehicle, aeroplanes, and the bullet trains. Here we have the gravity definitions. Gravity or gravitation is a natural phenomena by which all things with mass or energy, including planets, stars, galaxies, and even light, are brought towards one another. On Earth, gravity gives weight to physical objects, and the moon's gravity causes the ocean tides. Then we learn about the weight and the mass. The mass is essentially how much stuff is an object, or we can say that the matter in a body. And the weight, this is the force, and it is due to the gravitational force, gravity of the earth. Okay, students, now we have the exercise. Question 1, column A and column B. The amount of the matter in an object, mass. The amount of gravitational force acting on object on the earth, weight. The force which opposes motion or movement and produces heat, friction. A push or pull exerted by an object on another object, force. Fill in the blanks. A force is a pull or a push between two objects. Number 2, the instruments which is used to measure force is called spring balance. Number 3, the SI unit of force is the Newton. Number 4, the force which stops or slows down a moving object is called the friction. Number 5, all matter on your planet exert an invisible force of attraction on other matter which is called gravity. Gravity always attracts things towards each other, but it never repels them. The measure of the amount of matter in an object is called mass. Weight is the amount of force exerted by the earth on object on its surface. Isaac Newton was a scientist who discovered the force of gravity. Friction creates heat, which becomes a problem in machines. Now we have true and false. Frictional force stops or slows down moving objects. True. The SI unit of the force is a kilogram. False. The SI unit of the weight is called the Newton. True. Mass is the distance of an object from the earth. False. Rough surfaces help increase friction. True. An astronaut body mass on the moon will remain the same as on the earth. True. In the next we have the difference between the weight and the mass, or the comparison of weight and mass. You will write the definition, and also you mention the unit over there. Question number 2. Define the following with examples: force and gravity. So you write the definition of force and also the gravity, and you give the examples with them. Question number 3 is which of the following involves force and which do not. I make here two columns for you and we separate in the force involved and which object the force does not involve. Question number 4. What holds the earth as it orbits the sun? Question number 5. Explain why the weight of a person or object decreases on the moon. What is the relationship between surface type and amount of the friction? Question number 7 is state any two situations where frictions can be helpful. It means that we will write here the two advantages of friction. State any two situations where friction can be a problem. How can these problems be solved? In this, we will write two disadvantages of this and also we give the solution of that problems. In question number 8, how would life be different if there was no friction at all? List three things which would be difficult to do and three things which would become easier. Same, it means that we will write here three advantages and three disadvantages of the friction. On page 112, there is a crossword puzzle. You will solve it by yourself. Also, the hints are given. Okay, student, inshallah, we will meet in the Zoom meeting. Allah Hafiz.